Hello, this is OverlordBou back with another ship review video, and today we'll be looking at the new German supership, the Clausewitz. Like the previous superships, the Clausewitz will be available for bidding in the upcoming 11.8 auction, which will be starting on the September 29th and ending on October 3rd. Now, the minimum bid starting at 100 million credits. Now, the number of lots is 500 for all four servers combined, with the winners receiving the ship, a 11-point commander, and a first. And the winners will pay the lowest winning bid. For reference, winning the lowest bids was 220 million for the Edgar and 250 million for the patch. Now, with that out of the way, now the Clausewitz will be formally released in the tag tree line starting with patch 11.11 as the final ship in the German cruiser line. Now, players will need to research at least 3 tier 10 ships, including Hindenburg, before purchasing the Clausewitz. If you're interested in the Clausewitz, I'd strongly recommend waiting for patch 11.11. Buying her through the auction will be at least 3 times as expensive for just a few months early access. Unless you have a lot of credits lying around, I don't really recommend bidding in the auction. Again, wait for a few months before buying her. Now, I do play her very similar like I do the Hindenburg, so you'll be seeing that throughout this video. Now, with that out of the way, I'll be going over my recommended captain build, module setup, followed by the ship's stats, and finally, I'll give my thoughts about her performance overall. Now, I do have 2 captain build for the Clausewitz. Now, the first one is going to be the standard build, which we show on the top right. It'll be a typical cruiser build, but on the Claus, you build into the spotter plane. Other than that, it's pretty ordinary build. If you pretty much have this, if you use if you already have a Hindenburg and you already have the build for that, you don't really need to change the captain for that. But if you're trying to get a captain specifically for the Clausewitz, this is the build. This is the build I recommend. Now, for the lighthouse build, you'll be building this to maximize her damage running ability at the cost of the direct game impact. So if you're wanting to get those big damage games, this will be the build for that. Now let's move on to the ship stats, starting with her armor and survivability. Now the armor will be shown on the top right. She has a 27mm bow/stern with a 50mm deck. And it does have the signature German turtleback on her as well. Now it does have a 58,000 HP pool. It has a 16% torpedo protection with an extra heal, which is very nice. Clausewitz is a modest improvement over Hindenburg, sporting a 50mm deck normally reserved for Russian cruisers. This makes her more resistant to BBAP at long ranges, a problem when playing Hindi. Overall, this makes Claus a very durable cruiser, difficult to kill even if mishandled. Next up, let's move on to her main guns. Now, for her main armament, she gets 4 triple 210mm/60 guns with an 18.5 kilometer range, a 10.5 second base reload, and a 22.5 second 180 degree turret traverse. You can fire 37 degrees off of the bow and 39 degrees off of the stern. Now, for the HE shell damage, she does 2,950 with 53mm HP pen, a 15% fire chance, and has a 202k HE DPM. Now, for the AP shell damage, you do 6,200 damage with a 14mm overmatch with a 45 through 60 degree ricochet angle with a 425k AP DPM. Whew. Now, the dispersion will be shown on the top right. Clausewitz has one of the highest average effective DPM of the heavy cruisers due to her high base firepower and 50mm HE pen. Her AP is okay, but still suffers from poor penetration, sadly. Now, this will still deal good damage to broadside targets, but don't expect citadels unless at a very close range. Now, Clausewitz's biggest issue will be her turret angles. As you'll be seeing in this video, it is kind of difficult to fire all guns without showing your pretty much the flat broadside, so you definitely have to be careful, or they may be able to just smack you for all the pin damage or get a citadel on you somehow. Now, still, if the players can avoid getting whacked in return, Claus will quickly tear apart any ship she comes across. Moving on, let's talk about her secondaries. Now, she does have 10 twin 128mm/61 guns that do 1500 HE damage. They have a 4-second base reload with an 8.3 kilometer range with a 5% fire chance. Now, it does have a normal secondary dispersion, which is aka bad for cruisers. Like most cruisers, Clausewitz secondaries are of little relevance. Despite having more guns, their inaccuracy prevents them from dealing serious damage. It's better to rely on her torps for close range fights. Now, speaking of her torps, she has 4 Quint launcher 553mm torpedoes that do 13,700 damage with a 6-kilometer range, and they have a speed of 64 knots and a reload of 112 seconds. Now, Clausewitz torpedoes are very dangerous, able to sink almost every full health BB if all 10 connect. However, their 6-kilometer range limits them to close range attacks. Though she carries 10 per side, she gets 2 chances when rushing other ships. Next up is their anti-air. She gets 5 inner plus 1 outer flak, with a long-range DPS of the anti-air starting at 6 kilometers with 140. The mid is 312 and the near is 399. Though the A values look solid, Claws doesn't have enough range to make them effective. Even tier 10 CVs will have no issue repeatedly striking Claws unless they're using dive bombers. Now, DFA will help for sure, but she relies more on her maneuverability to dodge attacks. As for her anti-submarine capabilities, she does get airstrikes with a maximum of 2 charges, and number of bombs per attack is 2, and these depth charges do 4,900 damage per depth charge. Now, the reload time is 30 seconds and a range of 8 kilometers. At least she does get the depth charges, the airstrikes, compared to the Hindenburg that only get the ship depth charges and not the airstrikes. So thankfully, she does get the ASW airstrikes. Now, just like every other super cruiser, she does get the airstrikes, so thankfully she does do that. Though they can hit relatively hard, the 8-kilometer range can be too short to fight smarter subs that stay out of range. Now let's cover her maneuverability. She has a top speed of 32.5 knots, an 820 meter turning radius, and an 11.8 second rudder shift time. Now, the Claus is a slow ship by supership standards, but at least is faster than the Hindenburg. Her unimpressive maneuverability is also an issue as she struggles to keep all her guns in action while angling between salvos. While not good, it's also not too detrimental to her overall performance. Next up, let's move on to her concealment. She has a base surface concealment of 15.8 kilometers and an aerial detection of 9.7 kilometers base. Now, for the best, she has a 12.8 kilometer best surface detection and a 7.9 kilometer best aerial detection. So pretty good on that. Though technically worse than most other cruisers, cause detection doesn't make a significant difference in practice. She still does well at long range kiting, though she will have issues getting close, so definitely be wary of that. Finally, here is the consumables available for the Claws. She does get a standard cruiser DCP, the 5-second immediate period, and a 60-second reload. Now, you can choose between the standard DFAA or the German improved hydro. I do prefer the German improved hydro, but if you feel like you're seeing a lot of CVs that particular day, you can always switch to DFAA. Now, for the DFAA, you get 4 base charges, 5 the superintendent, that increase your continuous damage by 50% and increase your flak damage by 300%. You get a 40-second reload with an active time and an 80-second reload time. Now, for the German improved hydro, you get 4 bar base charges, 5 with superintendent. You get a 6-kilometer surface detection with a 4 kilometer torpedo protection with a 120-second active time and a 120-second cooldown period. Now, for the next consumable, you can pick either the spotter plane or the catapult fighter. I would definitely recommend the spotter plane. I wouldn't really recommend the fighter plane, but of course, personal preference up to you. You do get 4 base charges, but that increases your main gun range by 20%, and you have a 100-second active time and a 4 minutes reload time. Oof. Now, for the catapult fighters, you get 3 base charges, 4 fighters per squad, with a 60-second active time and a 90-second reload. Now, you do get a standard cruiser repair party, which heals 14 through 17% of the total HP. You do get 4 charges base, 5 if you build into superintendent, and you get 1 extra compared to other cruisers, which is pretty cool. So the Clausewitz, you do get an extra heal on. Now you do get the same, and it has the same pretty much loadout as the Hindenburg on its consumable choices. Now that I've covered the Clausewitz stats, let's talk about her overall performance. Now my overall impressions of the Clausewitz is that she has a low skill floor and a skill ceiling low to middle area. Now the Clausewitz is pretty much a beefed up super ship version of the Hindenburg. I play her pretty much exactly the same as the Hindenburg, just maybe a little bit further back, or it really depends, a little further back normally. Now, like her tier 10 counterpart, Clausewitz excels at long-range kiting and farming ships to death. Her best combat range is 12 through 17 kilometers, providing a good balance of damage output and survivability. While Clausewitz rarely gets close to enemies, her formidable torpedo armament will make short work of any ship that challenges her. In typical scenarios, standard kiting tactics apply. Now you dodge shots when possible and avoid showing BBs your broadside. Basically, if you know how to play a kiting cruiser like a Hindenburg or a Zao, then you'll know how to play Clausewitz. It's pretty easy it's a pretty easy ship to step into, and you know what you're doing. Overall, Clausewitz is closer to what a super ship should be, a modest improvement of her tier 10 counterpart. Though she lacks the gimmicks of other super ships, she doesn't need them because of her already high damage output and survivability. Though overall inferior to the Conde, which I don't know what super ship ever is going to be, Clausewitz is still a great pick, whether as their first super ship or as an easy damage farming ship. Now for randoms, I'd say the Clausewitz is overall above average when factoring matchmaking, but mediocre by super ship standards. She's generally inferior to the Conde in game impact, which every super ship is going to be. In ranked as an average, she has an amazing damage output, but lacks play-making abilities like other super ships. Now for clan battles, she is completely outclassed by the Conde in almost all relevant aspects. Unless Conde is limited or banned, she is unlikely to see use. Now if you were to put this ship versus a Conde, I would say that this ship would most likely win, and hear me out. The reason why that this ship would win if you're going to put a Clausewitz versus a Conde, the main reason is that this ship has a faster reload than the Conde, and also the fact that since the Conde is a French ship, it does have the 32mm armor, which this ship can just melt through. So if you do put like a Clausewitz and a Conde fighting, if the Clausewitz is pushing the Conde is most likely going to win. But if the Conde is pushing the Clausewitz, most likely the Clausewitz is going to win. So that's just my 2 cents of those two. Other than that, again, the auction will be starting on September 29th and ends on October 3rd. And I did enjoy playing this ship. It pretty much just felt like a beefed up Hindenburg, and I already enjoy playing Hindenburg. So for me, it was just a perfect fit. It was just fit right in the glove. It just felt really smooth, easy to get into, easy to play. If you ever enjoy playing a kiting cruiser like a Hindenburg or a tier 8, like a Hipper or a Rune, you should be perfectly fine playing Clausewitz. But again, super ships are at a very expensive to run and play. So again, it's not really something you need. But again, if you're just playing the game and you just gotta, you just got all the creds in the world, and you'll be fine. You'll have fun with it. But yep, this is going to be the end of the video. If you guys have any questions or concerns, let me know in the comments down below. But this is OverlordBou. Thank you all for watching, and talk to y'all later.